Ladies and gentlemen, our next speaker is a professional moderator. Just kidding, not really, but he is the CEO of Blue Shark Advertising, and the SEO girl, Nalini Prasad, is going to be up here next, and what they are going to talk about is basically yesterday we kicked off the day with Peter Shankman, and he is the futurist of Blue Shark Advertising, and right now what we're going to talk about is what's working to make you money today with local search and LSAs. So please put your hands together for Seth Price, Nalini Prasad. Good job, mister. Good luck.
Testing, testing. 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 And if this man can't hear us, nobody can hear us. Testing. 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 There we go.
I think you're good. I'm good.
Awesome. Awesome to be back here at PILMA. Thank you, Ken, Sherry, all of the PILMA team. I think it's my 11th PILMA. I came here as a lawyer with a modest law firm, and through a lot of the friendship and mentoring here, grew Price Benowitz, my law firm, to about a 43-lawyer shop. Geeked out on digital so much that about 8 years ago, we got a team together, including rock stars like Nalini, our Chief Strategy Officer, where we dive deep into search, but specifically local search. As I've built my firm, as you guys, I'm sure, are well aware, there's a lot of things that go into digital marketing, but all that really doesn't matter if the phone isn't ringing, you're not getting monetizable cases. So today, we are going to bring to you, as Ken has asked us to do year after year, what the latest updates are with local search and where we see the highest impact to make money right now. We love the future, but right now we need to be able to pay the bills month after month. And recently we got to make this presentation at PubCon, one of the sort of elite digital marketing conferences in the country. It's amazing in the last few weeks how much has even evolved in that time. So I will hand this to Nalini to kick this off.
All right, so I know we've had a long day of learning, right? And we're the last thing that's keeping us all from drinks. So I want to make sure that this is as valuable as possible for you guys. And that means raise your hand, stop us, ask questions, right? Tell us about what's going on with you if you see anything here that begs a question. So today, as Seth said, we're going to be talking about local specifically. And basically what we see when we work with SEO companies, right, and we talk about ranking on Google, everyone says, oh, well, I'm number one, right? But number one in organic, I was just talking to somebody yesterday, kind of when we looked at a real search, number one in organic is actually 17 whole buttons scrolling down to get to number one, right? So you're really number 17 when you're number one organically. That's doing content, that's doing links, but above all of that, you have all of these ads and you have the local 3-pack, right? The local 3-pack is a place where people are able to engage with your reviews, they're able to see photos of you, they're able to learn about your business and decide right away, do I want to call this law firm? Do I want to work with them? Right? And that is really where you're going to actually see conversion. So visibility on organic top 10, if you're not going to get calls, is not going to do anything for us, right? Who wants a billboard in the desert? So here's where we're going to try to figure out how do you get into that local 3-pack higher above the organic, right? There's a whole host of items that you're going to want to actually pay attention to fill in order to tell Google, hey, I deserve a spot here. I'm the smartest person in the room in my market to help the consumer, right? So one of the first things is this Google Business Profile. Most of you are very savvy, right? We all have 1, maybe 2, 3 locations. A lot of you are using a company to do this, right? So at the end of the day, what I want to kind of point out here is that we've talked a lot about AI and ChatGPT today. We're not going to touch on that, but the Google bot has been AI for years, right? It's been learning based on how consumers are searching. So how are people trying to find lawyers, right? What are they looking for in a company? And so Google designed this profile and the fields that it asks for specifically because it knows the consumers want to know this information about your firm, right? So if there is a field, I have said it for years, and we'll show you why it's important, fill it in, tell Google what it needs to know about your firm. Why are you the person that should actually be helping the consumer? As we've kind of gone through local through the years, there have been factors, and that's kind of where I said, here's what you're going to pay attention to in order to teach Google, this is why I deserve to be in the 3-pack, right? That used to be a list that was what? When you started this, you had to just have citations.
Correct.
Right? Very simple things, 1, 2, maybe depending on where your office location was. As we see, just as Seth mentioned, in just the last couple of months, there are new fields that are being added, and these fields are now actual ranking factors, right? So this list is continuing to grow. This list is not exclusive. There's a number of items that go into actually getting you into the 3-pack, but we're gonna talk about a lot of the most important items, right, or the hot ones today. So here is just kind of an idea of how the local 3-pack has been growing, right? You see that they're testing different look and feels. You even see that they're testing a 5-pack, right? And as we kind of go through this, as Seth said, there's items that are happening right now factually, hey, let's fill this out. Let's make sure that we find ourselves in the 3-pack. But I also, Seth and I geek out over this stuff. We talk about this stuff offline at, 10 o'clock at night. And I have these bold predictions that I'm going to make, right? Because I think they're fun to talk about what the future could be. Don't take those to the bank, right? That's just Nalini being wild and saying things. We're not going to go home and try all of this and then come back and be mad about that. But when we look at this, I think what we see is that Google is slowly trying to build more local answers at the top of that page, and is slowly getting further and further down with that organic. So,
right. And my cynical view is that Google wants more time with Google. Your site is not theirs. And so as we do things like book travel, hotels, flights, the more that is controlled through your Google business profile, what used to be a Google My Business, is important to Google because that's their whole ecosystem. They want to control that so that every time there's another field, another thing to do, it's free. I mean, it's labor to do it, but the idea is our goal is to make sure that we take advantage of each of these, not knowing which ones are going to take off, but we want to be there no matter what, because it's not like you're paying $10,000 to list a post, but if posts become important, great. If they don't, so be it, but we want to be there for each of the different things that are being done.
And actually, I got a really good question recently when somebody said, how much do you pay for that field or that feature? And I don't realize as I say this, it's all free. So absolutely, it's time. It's just putting in some time because it could pay off times 10 in the future, right? So here we go. All right, so in terms of the 3-pack and the implications of everything, one thing that I want to point out here is that while it is important to do everything you possibly can on that actual profile, it is also extremely important to make sure that your other factors in SEO are covered as well, more specifically your website, right? So if you look here under the historical image, you'll see I kind of have little orange boxes. And on every 3-pack result, what we see now is Google showing the searcher, hey, they mention this term on their website. It's the term you just searched for, so this is someone who's relevant to what you're looking for, right? And those terms are getting longer tail. It's making sure that the consumer is now able to say, yeah, I really want to click into this person, right? Or call this person. And if you're missing those items, you're not giving Google the information it needs to say that you're the best answer and the best connection for that searcher, right? So we don't just forget about websites, we don't forget about link building and content when we're optimizing for local. It's all very important.
Right, and if you're in a really non-competitive market that not a lot of people are in, you may think, hey, I'll just do a Google My Business and I'm good with some reviews. It's where you start to get competitive, where the website itself, it's the intersection of all the SEO that we all try so hard with content and links, that combined with the Google Business Profile is what's going to get you to that 3-pack.
Absolutely. So we talked about that there's some new items out, right? And so to understand why Google does what it does, right? This is factual. This is what we've seen happen through the last 10, 15 years as Google has kind of created the local 3-pack. So Google will first create that field for you. It'll then say, okay, well, here's what you can do. It's limited. You'll start to see in a few months after that, oh, I can do more with this field now. They're starting to expand. Maybe it was you could only enter in 1 item. Now you can enter in 4 items, right? Then you start to see that they're tracking this information in their own tracking software that they call Insights. So you log into the back end and you can see all sorts of information. And as soon as you see that Google is collecting data on that field, it is going to be a ranking factor, right? Why else would it be collecting the data? It wants to know who's doing this more effectively, who's doing this more frequently, who's answering this question better, how many consumers are interacting with your business profile versus your competitor. And then you start to say, okay, well, this is now a factor, right? And you start to see it actually show in rankings.
Right, so essentially you've seen this forever, right? This has been something you sort of watch these things happen, but all of a sudden it's actually a thing, and they're starting to systematize this, so it's not just random like Nalini's craziness, but rather Google is giving cred to the fact that they are using this process to determine what's going to be important.
Correct. And to be fair, you're not going to go to Google Guidelines and see that graphic I just made, right? That's just from us tracking this historically and seeing it. So as an example, Seth always talks about it was Google Plus. I guess,
Yes.
right, way back.
How many of you guys were on Google Plus back in the day? It was huge, right? We wanted to be there. By the end, it was just us in this room, like legal geeky marketers. But it was a far superior platform to Facebook, in my opinion. But like, if Google's doing it, we want to be there. I was there till the last day when they shut it down and kicked us off. So the idea is, if they give it, we want to use it.
But sometimes it doesn't work out, right? Sometimes it's not what's going to get you to rank number one. But if you didn't do it and it was, you're behind your competitors now, right? So another quick example is GBP posts. People are, you pay to do these, and maybe you pay a service to do this as well, but you can do them weekly. It gives information to the consumer on the bottom of your Google business profile. We saw it go through that exact methodology, but what we see now at the end, right, is that they're no longer tracking the data of Google Business Profile posts, and that is because they have so many new fields that actually give them more insight into how a consumer actually interacts with your business, right? This was very early on. It doesn't really tell people how much they care about your business as much as maybe a review, right? Or now, products and services, which is a new field that if you don't have filled out, you absolutely should log in and do this today.
So if there's anything sort of breaking, this is, first thing that even if we were talking 4 months ago, less of a factor than today.
And a lot of times where people get confused about if something is even a field is because it doesn't show on the front end. So you can see that the products here on the front end of your Google Business Profile are at the bottom. You can have a photo. You can use this to say, what practice area do you do? This is bonus pro tip here. If you guys are doing something that is more niche, so if you're doing maritime or you're specifically doing birth injury cases in med mal, right? Anything like that, a lot of people are not putting that as a product. Right? So if you're one of the only firms in your market to say you do that as a service, you all of a sudden have this catapult to the top if all of your other SEO is good, right? Your website's together. These are the things that can make a big difference over a couple of weeks or a month at this point.
Right, so we always had the primary practice area. That's not new. And I know I woke up one day for Price Benowitz where personal injury was the number one, and we've been in the 3-pack religiously since the beginning. And all of a sudden I was gone. I'm like, what happened? And some joker came and changed us from personal injury to law firm, right? And it disappeared. You changed it back, boom, you're back in. This was the first time that we're like, okay, there are a lot of other things you do besides your primary category, and it's giving you the opportunity to sort of shape and get your practice to places you couldn't get before.
So use them strategically right now because they're brand new. You can put a little description. We don't know if putting in 2 keywords is better than 1 or 5, but this is also the advantage of working with folks who can test that, right? So they're able to kind of look into these products, and you can ask about them with your teams, in-house or otherwise. So then the other one is if you look, you can see services, and those services only show, though, when you look at a search and you're in the search results and you click on your Google Business Profile. So for a lot of folks, they don't even know services is an option, right, to fill in. But it is, and that's simply by just logging into your Google Business Profile area, which we're going to learn about how easy that is to do these days, to make sure that just everything is filled in. So then the last piece here is the service areas, which has been a big ruckus for the last couple of years, but it's really important still because it is still shaping the way that you should be optimizing where your offices are, like where you're looking at your competitors, what kind of market you want to expand into as you try to grow a law firm.
And knowing that we're going to talk about proximity in a minute, but we only get so much geography from Google. This is sort of what's going to be the way to claw back some that we've lost. So we'll talk about that in a moment.
Yep. So the service areas were really big during the vicinity update, which is past like 18 months, we've been going through this and figuring out ways to leverage what the vicinity update gave us, and that's what Seth was talking about. So,
Right, so this is not new. This is not breaking news. This is what we're all dealing with the fallout of. So last year we were talking about the fact that the area that we got shrunk. Nalini always talked about pizza near me. Google essentially is now doing lawyer near me whether we like it or not. You can't own an entire metro generally for competitive terms. This shrunk the radius, which is why we're sitting there for people that had a single main office without satellites. It was devastating for many of them digitally, and that we had to find solutions to get back as much of that geography as we could.
So on the other end, it was giving a bite of the apple to the smaller firms, right? So if you used to be taking over all of the Houston market, what you found was that you weren't reaching far away from your office location anymore in a 3-pack if there was a smaller law firm that was there, right? We weren't allowed to monopolize anymore. But through the time that we've had, right, we have figured out how does that big firm reclaim some of that geography. So it's not that you just lose it forever, and because where you're located, and that's the end of it, right? So these service areas have been around since 2018. So a testament, again, to how long it takes before one of these fields can kick in, right? We said 2021 was when the vicinity update actually happened. And we saw that come through here through time. But one of the times we realized that this was very big and serious was this. How do you actually see what service areas are? So if you look at this, or you look at any map on Google, if you type in a city, right, you're gonna see no longer a red pin showing you city center. Instead, you're gonna see a red outline that shows you what is the market, right? And sometimes that's not city limits. It is 100% how Google has defined the market by search volume.
And
right?
It may not be what you want. You may think of yourselves, Alex may think of himself as a plantation, but Google may not see it that way. They may see it as the next county over, whatever it is. We're stuck with how Google has defined that outlined area to make the service area.
And this goes to the point of where people will come to me and they'll say, I know my competitors, it's these 3 firms. And then you go look up, injury lawyer, and those 3 firms are nowhere in the 3-pack. They're not actually your Google competitors, right? So we have to go with what Google understands and what the bot understands, not try to teach the bot what it knows, right? The other way around. So here what you could see is that as you look at the Houston map, you'll see all these little neighborhoods and city names that are within Houston. These are all what are called the service areas. These are created by Google. Some of these are colloquial. You might actually meet somebody for a drink in these neighborhoods. Some of them you'll say, that's not a real neighborhood. It's based on search volume again, and each of these have their own red outline and own 3-pack.
One of the ways I think about this, if you ever have like a garage door that's broken, you need somebody to fix it. You don't really care where they are. You just want to know that that truck's going to show up and fix it. So essentially, this is your way of saying, I'm willing to service these areas. Now, and what we're going to talk about in a moment is, it's not like you're going to win because you say you service an area if the competition is all there, but it's at least letting Google know that this is okay for you to receive business in, and that can be really valuable if in fact there's not crazy competition and you can actually get population from it.
Absolutely. So now what you can do is actually add up to 20 service areas in the back end of your Google business profile, right? But you want to be strategic about it. Here is exactly what Seth was saying, is that you can see that this person's listed as Houston as their address, right? But the way that Google defines them as being in the red outline of Spring Valley. That is their market. They will compete only with Spring Valley law firms, right? Not Houston as a whole. And so you can always just kind of look up your own brand and see, where does Google think I am? What market am I in? That's where when people stand in that red outline, they will see me if they search for, lawyer. Now, what I can do to expand outside of that area that it defines me as is to add these service areas, right? So we kind of did some case studies on this, and what you could see is the before in a very competitive keyword, which you guys are all familiar with is the injury and car accident type keywords. You're going to see that the office in this case is right in the middle, right, downtown, and then what you can see is that in the before, the northwest, the top left of that box, right, weren't reaching very far into that area. We didn't have an office presence up there. But then after this vicinity update and after adding those service areas in the top left and bottom right of this area, of this market, we started to show in the 3-pack. because there are not law firms
Right,
there.
and you'll see red in the middle, right? That's DuPont Circle in DC, where there's a gazillion personal injury firms. You're not going to win that with service areas. But as you get to the upper left-hand corner, it's residential. There are no lawyers up there, no meaningful lawyers online, and therefore, when that happens, and you don't have great competition, but you have a strong organic presence, you can grab that real estate.
And what we also have here is that the more competitive keywords are not going to give you as fruitful results because there's more injury firms, right? So there's more saturation of them. There's less practice or service areas that you can actually dial into further away from your office. But for those smaller practice areas, if any of you guys are thinking about building up a second practice area, whether that's criminal, family, trust, and estate, this is a really low-hanging fruit way to capitalize on more geography further from your office. The smaller, less competitive keywords are going to have much more drastic results, as you can see in this case study with divorce lawyer, right? Just with service areas. So in terms of the suggested service areas that are happening now, this has just happened in the last few months. Google's like, okay, well, these are kind of close to you, so we're just going to suggest them, and people will go in and just click, yes, 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 add these, that's great. But they're not strategic. What we said was, right, you can reach where there are not a saturation of law firms. It has nothing to do with distance. So in theory, some people will sit up here and say, okay, well, you can only reach 2 miles outside of where your office location is. However, if 2 miles outside of your office location was that red city center DuPont and there's a ton of firms there, you're not going to reach. However, we reached the top left of that grid, which was 5 miles away, because there were not law firms. So you have to actually do a little bit of that research yourself to choose the strategic service areas, right? And again, pull up a map, a Google map, and you'll find them. It's also a drop-down menu. So as you start typing in these little service areas, you'll see that they actually exist in the back end. So now as we go from there, if you are in a saturated area like that, let's talk about that DuPont Circle area. So what if you wanted to capture that? What if you wanted to get some leads in that area if they're standing there and Googling? Then what you're going to do is, hey, look, we have to actually open an office location.
Right, and so for me, as an example, DuPont Circle, not that valuable. It's an office area, there's college students, everybody's taking Ubers, there's no parking. It's not a high-value target area, but if in fact you have a suburban office, we see this all the time, and you're like, why can't I win the downtown, which could be valuable, unless you put what I call a pin on the map, an office in that location, you're just not gonna get the search volume from that area. Google may love you, you have the best website, super powerful website, it's not gonna get the love in the 3-pack unless you can actually get an office verified there.
So in this case study that we had, there was an office that was a little bit outside city center, right, kind of southwest, and they had all the green lighting up there, but they couldn't quite catch city center. So what we did was we said, let's put a pin on the map. Let's get an office, passes the smell test with Google. We get it, and because all of their they're all fundamentals of the technical content links were there. As soon as they put that office location there, got some reviews, we found that within, months, we were getting leads already.
Days.
Yeah, days. I don't want to, it gets, days is great, weeks is great, but it's quick.
If you have the authoritative site, now the downside is it's now another set of reviews you need to get.
Right.
So when we did this was a little bit back, Google sort of given us a magic number of a minimum of 10 to be in play. So using that, think, obviously there are places where you need a lot more than that to be competitive, but until you get to 10, you're sort of naked with your Google business profile, but a pin plus 10 is your starting point.
Absolutely. And so this is questions that we get a lot. So as you guys are, hey, I've topped out in my market right now. I'm doing really well, but I want to take it to the next level. I'm trying to go from 5 to 10 million. I'm trying to go from 1 to 5, 1 to 2, right? This is where you're going to need a strategy that then expands truly your business. And that is thinking about getting into new markets.
Right, so again, basic fundamentals, we call this all the time, no Regises. It sounds awesome. If you have a single office and you rent a space there, that could withstand the challenge, but why get yourself taken down and then have to deal with it, right? And that the other piece, which is not intuitive that we bring up, and this is not new, but it's still important to reiterate, is that the primary category, will only show one type of law firm in one street address. So in the building, if there's a dominant player, you're not going to beat them. And if you're going to say, hey, there's another PI lawyer, let me join that person, and you then come in, you're going to dominate the building if you're using best practices. So just know that that's a thing. It doesn't make a lot of sense, but it's a thing. and that to get verified, that world has been turned on its head. It used to be, it was pretty easy, phone call, maybe a postcard. Now we're seeing them ask for video verification, and occasionally, if there are dubious factors in your profile, a live video verification. Signage is big to show, hey, this is not a scam. I have a real association with this space. And basically, the whole game, as we see it, is trying to figure out where can you get a verifiable office where there's not another competitor in the building, and at the same time, you have enough geography without killer people that already have hundreds of reviews that are already in place, that if you can find that great location that has population without the competition, I call it Moneyball if you love the book or movie, that's the sort of ultimate game to getting maximum return from local search.
And I think a lot of people, they get nervous when they say, okay, well, I do want to expand into another market, but I'm not going to go buy a building. I'm not going to spend a ton of money on rent, right? And so there are lots of ways to find a commercial office space to share, or it just has to pass the smell test with these 6, 7 check marks for Google. We have a guide in here. I have a lot of information in the presentation that obviously we're not going over, so that if you guys take this, you go through it slowly, go ahead, click on that. It'll show you exactly what you need to pass in order to make sure that your office is going to be okay to get verified. So in terms of some newer items too that we were talking about, Google is just becoming way more transparent, right? They are giving you the keys to the kingdom, and they are saying, hey, look, well, you don't need to go figure out through statistics anymore when there's even an update, right? Right now, we are starting to tell people on social, an update is coming. This is what it may be involving. They have a whole website for it now, and this is just in this year. This is brand new. But you can actually see information on the update that's coming out. Usually there's about 2 a year that are core big updates, and that means that they've taken all of the data that the consumers are giving Google, and they're uploading that into the bot. So now the bot knows a little bit better what words people are using to search for certain items. It may be more specific to content. It may be more specific to checking backlinks or local. But this is a good way now that we can say, okay, a bump is coming, right? Some people may see some changes up or down in the next 2 weeks, but what we always see is it comes right back around. If you're doing things properly and using best practices, you will often see that if you did lose, you're gonna win again in that next 2 months as Google's figuring out what they did with that update, right? Oh, we swung too far, let's come back a little bit, right? So don't panic right away when you see that something has happened drastically. Take a look at, at what update came out. And you may always hear this, and I know it's a terrible, shitty answer we don't wanna hear, but sometimes it's just time that Google needs, right? So there's also the factors here where Google is showing you exactly how it got to its search results. So in your 3-pack, you can actually click this button and you can see what it's looking at. This is something that we just didn't have access to. And so now we can have more informed strategies and better ways to get people where they need to be quicker, right? This is another great way that when we used to update something on the back end of your Google business profile, you're like, I don't know, it could be anywhere from now till Friday. It'll come up at some point, keep refreshing, it'll be updated. Now they actually have 10 minutes till, 15 minutes till. The back end of their Google business profile is becoming far more sophisticated, which just makes me believe that they are truly investing in this piece of page 1. Right?
For a long time, there was really not much sophistication. The Google business profile, GMB back in the day, was so rudimentary, and they put so little resources into it that spam worked. You put a key name, keyword stuffed your name, boom, straight to the top. They were trying to fight it. Now, it's sort of part of the algorithm. So a lot of people, we were talking about this, that one of those factors is considering adding keywords into a business name, doing it right, getting it registered, changing firm names, something that will add to that. But Google is, the algorithm itself for traditional SEO is so sophisticated, we're starting to see them layer some of those resources into local because it's their component. They really want a lot of focus on that area.
Yep. And as I mentioned earlier, I was going to show you this, it's becoming so much more user-friendly as well. So not just transparency, but they created a whole new, what they call the merchant experience, which is instead of there being a back end that you would normally log into and have to update things in this platform, it's now on page 1. So, right, it takes you to where you're looking at your Google business profile at the same time. The buttons are very clear of what fields exist, and you can update things so very easily on a computer for yourself. right? There's no surprises in there. The GBP insights that I mentioned are accessible right there, right? So there's a button to get into this. And the one thing that is the coolest as of recent, you know, you can see all sorts of data there, but the one cool thing that now exists is that Google is allowing us to track calls directly from your Google business profile. A lot of folks here know that you used to have tracking numbers and use CallRail and go through 5, 6 different integrations to figure out what calls are coming from my Google business profile directly, and now you can actually see that. But the caveat is that it's in snapshots, so it may only be available for 4 months at a time of data or 6 months, so you'll still have to either take it out of there and put it in a spreadsheet to have aggregate data, or you continue to use the CallRail systems until.
And I would assume this is the future. I mean, many of you guys already use CallRail or some similar technology. The fact that Google's getting into this game, very exciting, because at least for us, it's so hard to attribute where things are coming from, and that there's been a lot of the Google business profile has sort of just been a black box, and to be able to see this and allow Google to help us dig into where things are coming from, hugely valuable.
What I also like about this is that there is a huge bridge that's often broken between intake and your leads, right, that come in. And if you're using a service, then often you're waiting for your monthly report to kind of see what calls did I get and marry that with your intake system or your case management system to say, okay, well, this source came from this, but this is at your fingertips, right? So midway through the month, you can go in and you can say, oh, look, my calls have been coming in, things are working really well, or, you know, maybe I should see if I should change this or that, or I could look at my intake. I can even talk to my intake team and say, well, shit, I had all these calls, but none of these things are signing. What's going on, right?
Correct.
You don't wait till 1 month or on that same day every month to actually dig into these items, right? Even internally. So very cool to have that data at the
And as we start to talk about local service ads, and spoiler alert, responsiveness is the call of the hour. But these calls to your Google Business Profile are equally valuable. You're not paying for them per call, but you don't want to lose those things.
Right. No, absolutely. So the local service ads, I know a lot of people have these already. They're running them, but there's a little bit of an update in the fact that as Google came out with guidelines, these are now 2 years old, I believe, right? So at the beginning, we said, okay, you could throw spaghetti at the wall. We said, as you said it was, they're sprinkling the crack. As new folks actually got verified and they could show in the local or in the LSA 3-pack, they were just getting a chance to show so that they would get calls, so that they would want to spend more money with Google, right? So then there was really no rhyme or reason as to how they chose the 3 that were showing in a lot of markets. Then we got about 1.5 years into it and we got guidelines. So Google said, hey, this is actually what you need to do in order to show in that top 3. The local service ads, how many of you are running them?
I would think if you're not, you should be.
Yeah.
There are very few things I'd say are definitively going to make money.
Yeah.
Outside of the personal injury space, question mark, but inside the personal injury space, the question is how much can you spend, not can you, not should you be doing, but can you get more of that market share?
For those of you who might not know why it is better than the traditional ads, it's pay per call. So you have an actual lead on the phone, right? And then you're also able to actually say, hey, look, this was a spam call, and you can say, I want to, appeal this, and you can get your money back as credit. You go through a verification process to even get there.
I just want to caution people. Yeah. We want people, if you really get something that's not a legit call, great. If you get too aggressive with that, our feeling is that's also a negative. We want to keep Google happy. There's some people that say challenge nothing, but if you're going to challenge, make sure you challenge smartly and you don't want to do anything statistically significant more than your competitors because you want to keep that faucet flowing.
Yeah, absolutely. And so this is kind of what it looks like at the top. You have this little green check mark, right, that kind of makes it look more trustworthy to the consumer. But more than that, if you were to pull up a search right now and look up, pizza near me, whatever it is, you'll notice that the LSA ads look almost identical to the Google 3-pack, right? So people who trusted that 3-pack and would always bypass those traditional ads, they're thinking that these ads are the 3-pack, right? So they more trust in it. You have to get verified, though, to get that little green check mark because Google's essentially saying that we verify and we trust this business. If you work with them, we put our stamp on it. So there's a little bit of a verification process there if you're not on it yet. But once you're in there, there's only a few things that actually show. It's your reviews, it's your years in business, right? And it's just that you want to make sure that these items are the things that need to be correct when you're going to get into this. So if you're going to do LSAs, it is very beneficial to have the reviews. If you're going to start a brand new Google business profile and you're only going to have 5 reviews, it's going to be struggles, right? So you have to think about, is this the right space for me? Am I actually going to be able to make money on LSAs? For those of you, though, with multiple Google business profiles, you want to have only one campaign, right? So you take the Google business profile with the most reviews, you run your campaign on that, and then you put service areas to reach all of the other areas that you actually do cover. You don't run multiple campaigns because Google has gone to lengths to write this down, 3 separate places about unfair advantage, right? And that if you do this unfair advantage and you have 2 of the 3 spots with your firm, we are going to penalize you, right? And it's not worth it to lose right now, still the cheapest cost per case sign.
Correct.
On LSAs. So these are when the guidelines came out. Yep.
So if you do have multiple profiles, you said only run a campaign with 1 profile. Is that better than limiting each profile to a distinct geographic area?
So
That's a great question.
Repeat the question.
Yeah. So the question is, you said that you would run 1 campaign with all the service areas versus running campaigns for all my office locations and limiting the service areas so they don't overlap, essentially, right? So the thing is, the Google algorithm will do what the Google algorithm wants to do, and even though you limit those service areas, if it is close enough and the competition is not very, very high in an area, it may still pull you into one of your other service areas in which you end up with 2 out of 3, right? So even though you do the right thing, you could still end up with that situation.
And I'm torn because if you want to be aggressive, if it's Google's issue because you're limiting the area they're showing beyond it, I can't tell you that they won't penalize it, but at the same time, it's a risk you may want to take, but make an educated decision about it, knowing that it's murky, but that there could be some risk associated with it.
And I will say, if your offices are hours away from each other, or if they're in different states, that's a different situation, right? Where you know that it's not even close to overlapping, you absolutely can run more than 1 at that point, right? So as we got into these guidelines, these are the most important factors, but the 2 that truly matter are budget and responsiveness. And even so, now I would say
Right,
responsiveness,
and if you take nothing away from us, it's responsiveness. If you are not responsive to your LSA calls, you're done. Google is tracking it. They know they know who is answering, who is not. They want to make money, and so that you should look. Your intake should be tested no matter what. But if you want the LSA calls, you better make sure the stuff's being answered. If you're using the text feature, which is half price, you better be answering. I have friends call me all the time. We lost our paid calls. What's going on? 95% of the time, it's because your intake is not handling it properly. So again, it can't be any more important from this that we are seeing the number 1 thing that people screw up is responsiveness. Intake, not easy, but if you're going to play this game, it's a pretty brutal 90-day look back where they can sort of sandbox you. You really want to make sure that you're not just ignoring their calls.
And this is confirmed at this point, right? So as we've gotten all these guidelines, those with Premier Google Access, all right, that run a lot of these campaigns, we have access to an individual at Google who is giving us straight answers on some of these things where we'll say, hey, they used to spend $60,000 a month this month, and last month they've spent 0. Something's obviously wrong. Oh, they missed a call on X, on X date, and they're in that sandbox right now. So tell them to just keep wait the 90 days. And also, if you end up getting another call, it's from the missed call. So if you made it 30 days, you miss another call, 90 days starts back, right? Crazy things like that are happening. And specifically...
We're talking phone tree?
Yeah.
There's stuff like phone tree that may be fine, they should be fine, but if Google doesn't perceive it as fine,
yes.
It doesn't matter. You get it to a live person. Take every, if you have multiple different phone jumps before it gets to a person, you have somebody with their cell phone. It's all great until they're out for drinks and they forget to answer the call. Whatever it is,
right.
Whatever your protocol is, get it as quickly as possible to a live person.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing that they were saying is that sometimes, you'll get a lead and you'll see it, especially on messages, because you can see what the issue is. Oh, it's a dog bite case, I don't handle those. That's fine. You know what? It's okay. They can see if you don't respond, though. So even if it is a case that you will not take, you need to just respond and say, hey, sorry, we don't service this. Maybe I can get you to someone else, or just say, hey, sorry, we don't service this, right? You don't even have to be helpful. Just make make sure that you're responding to the text or the call, right? Because that counts against you. So the other thing I'd take real quick minute is the budgeting, and I skipped over that because I assume that most people have gotten to this level already and figured this out. But obviously, it's always highest bid is what's going to work, but Google has kind of a different mathematical formula for LSAs in that they try to take the amount you say you're willing to spend and spread it over a month, right? So if you have a lower budget, what they're going to do is maybe there's 10 people who have asked for injury help in your market on the second day of the month. They're only going to show you to maybe 2 or 3 if you have a low budget because they're trying to make your budget last the entire month, right?
So
you want to bid high.
Don't be skimpy with budget.
Yes.
Even if God forbid it's spent, go to the bank and borrow the money. You'll make money. Like this is one of those areas, don't be conservative with your LSA budget. Push it beyond what's reasonable.
So we've been doing presentations and telling audiences everywhere, and I'm seeing more people are doing this in small or big markets, but if you type in an astronomical number into LSA's budget, it'll say, sorry, the cap you can do is this number, and that cap keeps changing, right? But if you put in the max amount you can bid, I feel that a lot of other firms at this point are doing that as well, so you need to be doing that, but you have to monitor. Don't just let it be the crazy bid. If you know you only want to spend $4,000 that month, monitor that, and if on the 8th you're done, right? Don't just put a max bid and let it ride. So then disputing leads we had talked about a little bit earlier too, which is just essentially, make sure that if it is a real issue, go ahead and do it. But if it's not, you don't want to be a complainer because Google's also not liking that for showing people. So now reviews, I think we always get a lot of questions here, but with the LSAs in particular, they have their own 2 sets of reviews. One is that you can get anonymous reviews sent through the platform where you put an email address in, and it has to be someone that you've also worked with, right? So you'd book it marked, and then you could send this thing. They can, because it's verified that they've actually become a client of yours through this platform, Google allows them to leave a review. It kind of looks like this, where it says anonymous reviews, right? And if you get these reviews through the platform, we are to believe that this will help you in your rankings at some point, right? We're not necessarily seeing that at this moment, but if it gives you the opportunity, you should try to do it. And there's also this other thing that you might see when you're doing LSAs now, which is a link that you can send to anybody, and it will give you a review, not on your front of your regular Google Business profile, but on the Google Business profile that shows when you click into your LSA ad. Right? It's strange. We don't know what it's doing just yet. If it gives you the opportunity, do it, right? They say maybe
Yes, I
five.
think it's in flux. I mean, we want to get all these different pieces at the same time. You have your main review count you really want. You want to get more of these. I know our time is limited. I think this, by the time we meet again, this will be sussed out. But right now, it's confusing with not a lot of direction. At the same time, if they're allowing it, 5 reviews for the LSAs minimum, 10 in the regular Google Business Profile minimum.
So there's also the review filtering that a lot of you have seen, and right now Google doesn't have an answer for that as well. If you're not seeing them on the front end, they're in a little box. You have to call support. They can try to get them back, but it's not always guaranteed. Just go ahead and keep trying to get those reviews during that time. We have a process here that we always talk about. Just have a process.
Correct.
Right?
I mean, again, if you're the owner of the firm, this shouldn't be something you delegate. I did, for instance, I gave it to my intake. As they got busy, thankfully, they forgot about reviews. It's something that needs to have the buck stop with somebody, and ideally you or somebody very senior that's making sure you're getting these reviews, making it easy, textable, all that stuff, nothing new, but ignore it at your peril.
And I always add, when you ask for the review, the words in the reviews are still very important. They're place topics, and Google's able to say if they saw that word more than 3 times, it becomes a category. So if they see the word injury 10 times, that word is now associated with your Google Business Profile. If someone's looking for injury, Google says this person has helped 10 people with that, right? So it's helpful. So the 2 questions I say, when you ask for a review, people know the stars are going to do, but they don't know what they're going to type in. So, hey, would you mind leaving me a review and just jot down what you liked about working with me and what did I help you with. Done. Now they know what 2 sentences they're going to put, right? So from there, these are just a very cool topic that we have seen in the last maybe 3 months. And this goes to if you guys do anything other than PI, right? And you want an opportunity to build that up pretty quickly. For the very first time, we are seeing Google give you the opportunity to rank for multiple practice areas with 1 Google Business Profile. So Seth can talk about this.
I was going to say, no, it's new. We don't really have time to go into it. We can talk about it privately, but It's not permanent. We've seen it come and go, but it would be very exciting for people who have always discussed you need 2 sites. We don't want 2 sites for SEO purposes. If this were to stick and you have a secondary practice area, you have 1 big site and add those in, great. But again, right now, I can't give you with confidence that it's going to stick, but if it does, it would be really, really
It's
cool.
around, and the example is that you can see that their primary category is law firm. When I typed in divorce lawyer in the results, it automatically changed it to divorce lawyer. When I did injury, it automatically changed it to injury because you had it as secondary, tertiary categories. So kind of cool stuff. Google's always doing different things. We're happy to chat about any of it. If you would like the presentation, we're going to make sure that all of the links to those guides and things are in there. You can go ahead and do the QR code. And then we're around. I'm going to be at the bar tonight. That's where I live, so I'm happy to talk about SEO all the time.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Thanks.
Wow, what a teamwork today on these two, right? I want to let you guys know I'm going to compliment you. When you asked everyone to open their laptop, they definitely did, and they checked out their business. So good job.